Welcome everyone to another episode of Shubhankar-Speaks. Today's guest is someone who is redefining what it really means to train for table tennis. Kevin Finn, the mind behind peak performance table tennis. He is not just a coach, he's a sports scientist and a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and the author of widely respected book Peak Performance Table Tennis: Your Potential and Play Like the Pros. Kevin, it's an absolute honor to have you here today. I've followed your work closely, from your push programs to your philosophy of training, smarter rather than just harder, and I'm excited to dive into how modern science can transform the way we train, think, and compete in the sport.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome, Kevin. So let's just get into the questions. So, what was the moment or experience that made you realize the way table tennis players played needed to change?
Great question. So it starts from my own personal journey. Um, I've always been a big fan of table tennis, but I played pretty much casually growing up. And depending on where I was living at the time, there wasn't always access to a high level club with certainly not one with full-time training available. And as I got more serious about the sport, I had also this burgeoning interest, this growing interest in sports science and personal training and bodybuilding and nutrition and all these other things. And I noticed that when I went to search for information about table tennis, there was nothing really out there that was of a high quality and that also was matching what the current state of the literature was. And so it kind of started from a selfish place, to be honest, where I realized I'm like, I want to get better and train more optimally for table tennis just for my own growth as a player. But I'm not really seeing anything out there that is scratching that itch for me. And so as I became more competent as a trainer and started studying more and reading more research and getting certified as a strength and conditioning specialist, I decided to start creating content myself just to kind of fill that hole in the market. And it's been really great feedback so far, and I've really enjoyed the process and getting to help other players improve physically and see those improvements in their game has been a great joy for me.
Yeah, that's very true because when I was a child, I never saw any videos which were mentioning sports condition, mental strength, and all. You were the first channel which I got into, and I got to know all about that.
Yeah, it's one thing that happens a lot in the table tennis community that I noticed was we'd have very high level table tennis coaches who are excellent technical coaches and very competent in teaching players technique and service and reception and all that. But then they would kind of just make up a physical workout just to the best of their ability, doing the best they can, but they didn't have that background in training in physical conditioning or nutrition necessarily. So either players would get advice from a coach who wasn't really qualified to give training advice on the physical front, or they would just go to like a box gym and work with a personal trainer who wasn't necessarily used to working with athletes per se. Maybe they're used to just general population folks looking to lose weight, or they put them on kind of a bodybuilding style workout, but they didn't have a lot of experience with table tennis as a sport. And so you'd kind of get one extreme or the other. So what my goal is to kind of step in and bridge that gap to where they're getting table tennis specific training advice, but something that is going to go well with table tennis and really up their game in a more targeted way.
Yeah, very true. And Kevin, what about table tennis needs burst of speed? So, what are some specific, simple, and effective ways players can develop real explosiveness without spending hours in gym?
Great. So speed work is something that is really important, and I would start with sprinting. That is a very simple exercise that you can do that is often overlooked and or misapplied. So the nice thing about sprinting is it's much more about quality over quantity. So when you're training for speed, it is not like training for a long marathon or a long run where you do it a lot until you're feeling very tired and exhausted. Often when we exercise, we feel like that's the goal. You want to feel really tired. But there's something a little counterintuitive with speed work in that you actually need to be fresh so that you can put forth a really good effort. And only then are you going to actually be able to get fast enough to reach those higher thresholds of speed that will result in those adaptations that we're looking for. So speed work can be done in, a couple sessions per week that are pretty short and sweet, even at the beginning of a table tennis technical session, because it doesn't actually tire you out that much. And in table tennis, we are not covering large distances. So short acceleration sprints of anywhere from 5 to 30 meters can be sufficient to really build that acceleration speed. And what I like to recommend to athletes is to just start with linear sprints, meaning sprinting in a straight line, because you can get faster that way. You reach higher top end speeds. And in table tennis, we're already getting a lot of side to side movement. And one of my big principles of training is when we are looking to train physically for table tennis, we have to consider the buckets that are not being filled because sport specific practice in and of itself does train your body. That is the said principle, specific adaptations to impose demands. So when you play table tennis, you're getting good lateral movement a lot, but we don't often sprint as fast as we can in a straight line. And so those linear sprints will build your speed in a way that will trickle down to those other aspects of your game. So getting faster in a straight line will also help you get a little faster side to side and moving around the court. So that is where I'd start is with some of the speed work. One thing I do say, younger athletes are often a little better because younger kids, as we play and we run around a lot more, older athletes sometimes forget that sprinting actually can be a little dangerous if you don't condition yourself up for it. There's some hamstring strain there. So I don't recommend full speed sprinting for older athletes. I recommend for them to build up to it first with some hill sprints or some sled work or resisted sprints or just submaximal work. But sprinting is a great place to start.
Okay, now let's talk about some mental health and all. Every athlete trains hard, but not everyone performs the same under pressure. From your experience, what separates the players who can stay calm and sharp in the big moments from those who cannot?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, this is something I struggled with a lot as a player and still struggle with, which is why when I was researching my book, I really put a big section in on psychological skills training. So, a lot of it starts with you need to create a training environment where you're putting yourself under a lot of pressure on a consistent basis. Because if you wait until a tournament or an important match, and that is the time where you're feeling pressure, of course, you're not going to be ready for it. You're not going to be conditioned. So, a big part of building mental toughness is creating that pressurized training environment. And there's a number of things you can do to create that. In your training, you can create some stakes where you have some punishment or reward contingencies, and the loser might have to like break down all the tables at the end of the match, or maybe the loser has to buy the winner lunch, something like that. Those are small little games. You can kind of gamify your practice matches just to make it feel like there's a little more pressure. But some other things that are really important are creating routines and rituals before your points. So there's some interesting research showing that pre-performance rituals really help reduce instances of choking in tight matches when you're feeling pressure. And so that would be little routines that you do in between points, stopping, taking time to take a deep breath, maybe bounce the ball on the table. And what this does is once you enact a pre-performance routine, because it's a familiar routine, it triggers automatic performance, which is what we're looking for. You actually don't want to be in your head too much in the match. You want to be triggering that automatic performance and hopefully getting to that flow state where you're just reacting and letting the things that you've practiced come to fruition in your match. And so pre-performance routines are a big one. Belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing is good too. That activates your parasympathetic nervous system and helps you calm down. Quiet eye is another thing the research points to. Quiet eye is when you're really steadily looking at the ball. So you're not kind of looking all over the place furtively. You've got a really focused kind of eye of the tiger look on the ball. All of these things together can help you perform better under pressure. But like I said in the beginning, a lot of it does come back to more and more practice of just being in that pressure situation. And that can also be come from just playing more tournaments. If you only play a tournament every so often, it's just going to be unfamiliar enough and you're not going to be playing your best. So sometimes it means playing more tournaments, entering more competitions, even if you feel like you're not ready, because that in and of itself is a type of training, that higher level of exposure to high level play, competition, and pressure. And a final thing I'll say on this is a lot of athletes have to understand that there should not be an expectation of I'm not going to feel nervous at all. Feeling nervous is part of it, and a good athlete will perform well even when they are feeling nervous. So sometimes if you enter a match and you feel a little nervous, you have to reframe that and understand that it's okay that I'm nervous, accept it, and still try to play your best. It's a myth that, the best athletes never get nervous, they never feel, pressure or anything like that. So it's not a problem. It's a feature, not a bug, right? There's
Yes.
not a big difference between nervousness and excitement. And so having those feelings are okay. You need to accept them and understand that I can still play well, even if I do feel this way. That'd be some of my biggest advice for that.
Yeah, the same tip, knowingly or unknowingly, I just used it yesterday. So I and my brother were playing a match. I was 2-0 down. So I said that if I lose to you, I'll just cut my hair. I'm just growing it for so many months. I said I'll cut my hair if I lose to you. I defeated him 3-2 and 11-6. So that knowingly or unknowingly challenged me to play my best game.
Yeah, so it almost seems like silly or funny, but that's perfect. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You created some real stakes there, and now you're taking it seriously. And so often we have, we'll take the tournament matches seriously, and then if we're playing a casual match with friends,
Yes,
we don't take it seriously. And if you just start taking those casual matches and being more
serious.
serious, it will make you a much better player. Just created a video for my team training app Push Plus, and I talked about a simple thing that I did once as a player where I noticed every time I got behind in points, I would lose the match. And finally, I decided, you know what? No matter how far behind in points, if it's 2-10, no matter what, I'm going to come back and try to win as hard as I can. And I did that for 2 months. And what happened was over time, I started to actually come back and win and make comebacks. And, sometimes it was luck. Sometimes I actually was able to pull it together. And what that did was it taught me that it is actually possible to come from behind. And I started stacking up this evidence of I can do this and actually created more mental toughness in me and made me a stronger player. Now I am a little bit better at winning from behind. Of course, it's still difficult, but I got rid of that bad habit of, sometimes it's you've got 2 points, they've got 10. You let off the gas a little bit. Maybe you lob the ball or just be like, all right, this game's over. Let's get on to the next one. Kind of took a step back. I'm like, no, let me treat this seriously. And those little small tweaks can pay big dividends down the line.
Yeah, Kevin, when a player feels stuck or has a bad season, what's the most effective way to mentally reset and start performing with confidence again?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say collaboration with your coach and training partners is key. I'm big on journaling and taking notes. And so, what I like to do with myself and some of the athletes I work with in terms of their psychological side is make sure you're taking notes on your training, writing down what works, writing down your successes and your challenges. And then for me, having a plan is very reassuring. So I like to look back over the year, over the season, and first of all, take stock of those victories and the things that I did well, that's a big part of building confidence because unfortunately, our brains have a psychological something in our psychology where we discount good things and we remember bad things. And I think a lot of this comes back to some of the way we evolved over millions of years, where like you can only be so happy, right? But if certain bad things happen, you could end up dying, right? You eat the wrong berry off a bush and you're dead. So it's very important for our brains to remember negative things. And the consequence of that is sometimes we overlook the positive. And so looking back through a training log and looking and seeing those victories allows you to notice, you know what, I feel like I had a bad season, but this like 3 months ago, I beat this player who I had never actually beat before. Or I've really noticed over time that my serve has improved. So taking stock of those victories is really important, but then also identifying those areas of weakness and creating a plan to address them. And then taking time, if you have a bit of an off season, to focus on physical training and nutrition. So getting the body, the engine going, I think can be another good tool in the toolkit because sometimes if your game is suffering, like your technical skills are not where you want them to be, if you can bring your focus to the physical side a little bit, that can make you feel like you're having some victories and making some progress, even while you're stagnating in your game. And what that does is it can build your confidence and actually trickle over and help improve your game as a result. There's something about building a little physicality, getting a little bit leaner, and improving your appearance that results in what I call the tight jersey effect, where it boosts your confidence because you're feeling better, you're looking better, and that just gives you a little bit more presence and confidence on the court as well.
Yeah, okay. And what's something you've seen in top athletes that a small habit or mindset that almost no one talks about, but actually makes a big difference in their performance?
That's a good one. So, the majority of my clients are more club level players. I've worked with some semi pros and some higher level coaches on a one to one basis and collaboratively. But one of the things I've noticed in the research that looks at top athletes is kind of covers what we've talked about previously is with this acceptance mindset of understanding that no matter the situation, I'm going to show up and perform my best. There's this consistency. So they're showing up, they're doing their training, and they're very consistent across the board. It's not like, well, I'm not feeling so well, so I'm going to skip this session, and that turns into skipping 2 sessions, and they're very inconsistent and all over the place. There's this consistency. So I'd say top athletes and top performers, they master the art of showing up. So no matter what, they show up for practice, they show up for training, they do the extra things, the small things that people overlook. And what that does is over time, that consistency just results in more and more improvements and they get further and further ahead, one small step at a time. So it's not like these long streaks of super consistent and then really inconsistent and they take breaks. It's just always plodding along and always taking the next step forward while having that mindset of no matter what, I'm going to try my best. If I'm not feeling well, if my pressure, if I'm feeling nervous, you know what? I'm going to perform and do what it takes to win.
So it's discipline over motivation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's something I talk about in my book. So you can't rely on these feelings of like enthusiasm and motivation that are temporary. It's more about building the discipline to show up and do the work every day.
Yeah. And Kevin, you have already stated that you work with some athletes from different backgrounds. But how do you think the next generation of table tennis players will be different from today's? Not just in skill, but in mindset, training habits, and approach of the game.
That's a good question. So I feel like we're noticing some more young stars, rising stars coming up. Harimoto comes to mind. he's not quite as young now, but he really made quite the splash when he first came onto the scene. And the LeBron brothers, of course. I think that table tennis has really taken a lot of strides forward in terms of them catching up with the science. All sports go through this, in their infancy. There's not a lot of information or knowledge about how to train optimally for the sports. And then as the sport becomes more popular and grows, the methodology improves and gets better. And I feel like table tennis has started to hit its stride in terms of that, where I'm seeing a lot of top pro players now doing physical workouts similar to the things that I recommend and doing weight training and taking the physical training a lot more seriously. And you can make an argument that the adoption of the plastic ball has something to do with that, where it does tend to lengthen the rallies a little bit. There's a little less spin on it. So you do need to be a little more physically fit and strong to endure those longer rallies and to try to compensate for the lack of spin on the ball. But I remember when I was coming up and first starting to play, there was a lot more resistance to the idea of strength training for table tennis. Whereas now I see players like the LeBron brothers doing heavy lifts, doing strength training, doing all the physical training that I talk about because we see that it's not making you slow or bulky, but it actually upgrades your physicality and really enhances the game. I'm not sure where exactly the sport will go from here on the more technical side. It seems like two-wing, a more balanced two-wing looping has become pretty prominent and become quite the dangerous weapon to have that more developed backhand. But we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kevin. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you for sharing your time and expertise with such clarity and depth. And I think a lot of players and coaches listening will take away not just training tips, but a new perspective on what true performance really means, physically, mentally, and strategically. For everyone tuning in, make sure to check out Kevin's work at YouTube and Instagram, Peak Performance Table Tennis, and also his book. It's a must read if you are serious about elevating your game. Kevin, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you.
Likewise, thanks for having me.